This is the Board of Boston Trail Committee meeting of January 13th, 2021. As a preliminary matter, this is Martha Taylor. I guess I'm the chair of the Newbury Board of Boston Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So Ted Russell.
Yes.
Steve Ram.
Yes.
Brian Baldwin.
Yes.
Kelly Kiley.
Yes.
And I'm here. And then we have two guests, Jerry Klima.
I'm here.
And Sid, how do you pronounce your last name?
Raschke.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. So they are two guests for the meeting. I don't anticipate that we'll have any public, but if we do, are you guys okay with allowing public participation?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So good afternoon. This January 13th, 2021 open meeting of the Newbury Board of Boston Trail Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newbury Board of Boston Trail Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom, as posted on the B2B agenda, which can be found on the B2B section, and the calendar of the planning of the town's website, and identifies how the public may join. You may join us by going to http://zoom.us and enter meeting ID 857-9534-6553, or by calling 929-205-6099 and entering the meeting ID when prompted. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and by telephone conference. Meeting materials were provided. We had some agendas come out just a short time ago, and two were distributed previously. Applicants or their representatives, well, we have no applicants. Let's see. I think rather than sort of going through, order of committee members, we'll just have open dialogue if that's okay with you, as opposed to being more formal. If anybody's participating by phone, you can use *6 to unmute yourself, or use the mute button if you need to on your computer. Please speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We'll have open dialogue as opposed to going through me. There will be an opportunity for public comment if there is public here. That can be done either by using the raise hand function on the video conference, or if you're participating by telephone, to hit *9 on your phone keypad. And each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So that concludes the preamble. So turning to
Martha, I just want to call your attention. It looks like John Reagan joined us. So we have a third visitor apparently.
Yes, I see
I
that.
need to
So
go through anything with a, you joined since you read the preamble.
right. So John, if you can unmute yourself if you'd like to.
No, I'm all set. I'm here.
Okay. All right. So turning to the first item on the agenda, discussion about the Border to Boston Trail license agreement. I know Ted sent some stuff out, and I can give a brief update on where we left this off a number of years ago. So I'll start with that. We, along with the other 4 towns that were part of our 4-town project, we did look at developing a license agreement for use of the trail. The agreements were good for 5 years. And this would sort of precede actually getting a lease agreement in place for actual construction of the trail, a 99-year lease for use. There were some concerns at the time among, first of all, some members of the select board at that time regarding liability and potential for breach of the trail and what liability we might have resulting from that. We've actually got that situation now with the breach that's happened because of the beaver dam. And there was also concern raised by Fish and Wildlife about segmentation of the project. So with those concerns, and it kind of got tabled. So I guess now it's coming up again, so we can sort of open up discussion about whether this would be the time to move forward with it. I did have an agreement with Steve, or a discussion with Steve Toll at National Grid at some point, who said that if we did want to move forward, we could start that conversation again with him. There was sort of a template that was done for all the communities. We were, because of the concerns that were raised, we were suggesting some amendments to that basic template. And if this is something that the committee wants to move forward with again right now, it's something that obviously we would need to work with town council on to kind of finalize that. Part of the lease license agreement was sort of an appendix indicating what work the trail committee might want to do on the trail, whether it was, cutting back, brush along the trail or clearing it. And some of those things are, National Grid just kind of went through and did their sort of periodic maintenance. So some of those issues aren't really necessarily relevant right now either. So anyway.
So are you looking for a motion to move forward with writing the agreement and proceeding ahead?
I would say that's really up to the committee as to, I guess the question is if we're not actually doing any work on the trail right now to clear it or anything like that, whether we need to get that in place or whether we can wait to get a lease agreement in place when things are really ready to move forward in terms of final permitting and construction.
Is there any drawback to doing it now sooner than later? I'm just thinking it would at least put it on the radar of council and put it on the radar of other folks in the town.
Yeah, I think that was pointed out at the December meeting. I think we all kind of agreed on that. But we didn't formally move to initiate that process.
So yeah, so if you want to take a vote on that, initiate that process, and what I can do is, and I meant to do that and unfortunately was not able to, send you the sort of final draft of where we were, and then I would need to, I think, talk with the town administrator to get the okay to work with town council on finalizing this, and then we need to have the discussions with National Grid.
Okay, well, I move that we as a committee move forward with the process of obtaining a lease.
Well, it's actually not the lease, right now it's the license agreement.
And license, okay. You could say that.
Whatever.
Yeah,
which will form the basis for the lease agreement going forward.
All right.
And I don't know, I'll sort of, Jerry, do you know if any of the communities, I guess Salisbury has, but if any of the other communities actually have a lease agreement in place?
Well, we have a lease from the MBTA. We
That's
don't
right,
have-
you're different, you're not
we don't-
dealing with
we don't
National
have-
Grid.
We don't have to deal with National Grid, which is
Right,
very
I
good.
forgot. I know Newburyport must for their portion of the trail. But I don't,
Yeah, I know, well, I know that, I believe anyway, that Topsfield early on in this process, got a license like you're talking about, and then began to do work on the trail and kind of opened it up. Now, I don't know where Georgetown stands. Do you know?
no, I don't. I can check with John Cashel or Chris Roop on that to see where they stand.
Because if they have one in place, that would be, first of all, it makes for something continuous from Byfield to Georgetown that could be opened up. And I don't, but I think that would be information I'd want to know too.
I did get a document from Chris Roop. I thought I shared that with everybody.
Yeah, I think you did. I think it was, and that's for a license. That was for the license agreement, not the lease. Is that correct?
Well, but if they have the license, then the whole trail can be maintained by people in both towns, right? If you get the license and they do too, then you can go all the way from Byfield to Georgetown Center.
Right. So, and I'm sorry, I sort of got out of sequence. We didn't have a second on that and I started
gonna point that
discussion.
out, yes.
Second it.
So I apologize for that.
All right.
So is there any other discussion on this matter? If not, I'll call for a roll call vote. So Ted Russell,
Yes.
Steve Fram,
Yes.
Brian Baldwin,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
okay, and me, yes. Okay,
Okay, duly recorded.
so the next item on the agenda was an update on the Parker Street Trail Connection, the Mass Trails Grant application. So I did have a meeting earlier this afternoon with Liz Altman, who's with the engineering firm that's helping put this whole thing together. The grant application is due on February 2nd. And I think there's been a first draft, which Jordy Vining from Newburyport made a lot of comments on. She's incorporating those comments. It's going to circulate a second draft next week, which I'm happy to share with you all if you'd like to see it. And then final comments will be incorporated, and I think probably they will be submitting it on the town's behalf using my name, my email. I think, as you all know, CTC has very generously voted on a $10,000 grant to support this effort, and we'll also be putting in some amount of time for in-kind hours, probably mostly me, and I'm anticipating our DPW director to some extent, not a huge amount, but at least it'll take us over our 20% match. The grant request is going to be $50,000, 50 even. And so that will demonstrate, additional commitment on the town's part and, serious interest. So that's.
So there's nothing for this committee to do. We're piggybacking on Newburyport. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, so I mean, basically this is to make that final connection from the Parker Street terminus of the trail right now back over to the train station, and it's about 500 linear feet in Newbury that needs to be done. So this particular grant is for basically design and permitting, and then there would be a follow-up grant request for the actual construction of that segment of the trail itself. We did Liz and I did talk about, letters of support. I think Jordy is going to be getting a letter of support from the mayor. And I think Jerry's working on a letter of support from CTC. We do have the grant agreement has been signed by our town administrator. I'm going to reach out to Tony and Betsy at Merrimack Valley Planning Commission to get a letter of support from them. And Liz and I were sort of thinking that we may want to hold off on getting, the big guns, the senators and representatives involved for the construction portion of it, which will be much more significant than, in cost than the permitting and design portion of it. Jerry, if you have any thoughts on that.
They are always very happy to oblige. So I wouldn't hesitate to ask, and you tell them it'll be 2 steps, but I know you've done that a number of times in Salisbury. We always get them and they get them in quickly. Just give them I've drafted a form I can send to you, at least to get you a suggested version.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Do we have maybe a volunteer of a member on the committee to do that, just to take something off of Martha's plate? Or is that wouldn't be from this committee, I
We'll
guess.
see if it comes best from the town,
Yeah.
some town
Yeah,
official. I would say.
Enough said, yeah. Of course.
Right. I think, if we do that, I would, perhaps Jordy could follow up. Well, we'll see. We'll sort it out. But I think Jerry's right. It's best coming from the town. But thank you for the offer. So that's about all I have on that.
So that's all lined up, though? That seems like it's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it's in good shape.
Okay.
Yeah, the engineer has really taken this on, and it sounds like all the components are in place, and it just needs fine tuning at this point.
Yeah, it's very good that they this is all basically volunteer time on their part. So that's
Awesome.
That's a big contribution.
Yeah, no, it's a huge contribution, and they've lined up consultants. There's some additional survey work that needs to be done and some additional wetland flagging. And also, since part of the property is on part of the project is on National Grid property, I think Jordy is going to be reaching out to National Grid to also get, a letter of support or commitment from them saying that they are fine having this going forward on their property. So that's the other component. So I think that's in good shape, and that will be submitted on or before the deadline on February 2nd.
Martha, is it necessary or advisable to record attendance of additional visitors or guests who's shown up to the meeting here, or is that not necessary?
And I think certainly if any of our guests speak, it would be good to record that. I don't know. And since we only have 3 right now, I think you could note them if you. So let's see, we've got Susan and David. If you can provide us with your last names, that would be helpful. You can either type in your names using the more function or just verbally tell us. And you will need to unmute yourselves if you want to speak. So, and if not, we can move forward with the rest of the agenda.
Okay.
So any questions about the Mass Trails grant application? Okay. So the next item on the agenda was the continued discussion about B2B committee member roles in terms of sort of liaison, outreach, et cetera.
Yeah, so I suggested that for the last meeting and we had, I think, a really good discussion. I didn't include any of the details of it in the minutes, but those of us who were here, I think, remember the different possible roles we talked about. And, the only one that's formally identified is my, excuse me, myself as a liaison to the CTC. We talked a fair amount about possibly forming a separate Friends of the Trail organization. And I think Brian and Kelly were interested in doing that. I don't know if that's something that formally would need to be created by this committee, because it really would be a citizens group that some of the other towns have as a liaison with or as an auxiliary to the committee. We also talked about even though, I fully understand that Martha, that Stantec wants somebody from the town, namely yourself, to be the one working with them, but if it would be helpful for another committee member to actively participate in the way I think, Jerry has done in Salisbury, to take the load off you on different things where needed. So did I capture that discussion adequately? Everybody that was at the December meeting?
Yeah, I think one question I think you had sent me a note to Kelly on the side and just, curious, like if we were, because I think that Friends of the Trail group is a separate thing. It's not affiliated with this. So that would be, we can just kind of stand that up and roll with it, correct? There's nothing kind of holding us back in terms of approvals or.
So I guess, what would you see as the sort of the mission of the Friends of the Trail Committee?
I think the goal of that would be mostly just public outreach. I think, promoting the trail. I could see, putting up, news about what's going on and, just trying to get people involved and aware of, the efforts we're trying to undertake to